She walked into the most exclusive charity gala in Texas, wearing diamonds worth more than most people's homes. On her arm, her billionaire fiancé. On her face, the smug smile of a woman who had won. But here is what she did not know. The anonymous billionaire hosting this gala, the mysterious woman everyone was desperate to meet, it was her fiancé's ex-wife, the same woman he had thrown out of their home while she was 7 months pregnant. The same woman he had called worthless. The same woman he had left with $47 and a broken heart. 5 years ago, Caroline Mitchell lost everything: her husband, her money, her home, her baby. Tonight she owns his company. She owns his debt. She owns his future. And he just walked straight into her trap. What you are about to witness is not just a story of revenge. It is a masterclass in patience, a blueprint for rising from the ashes, a warning to every person who has ever underestimated a woman with nothing left to lose. Caroline did not just survive. She did not just recover. She became the most powerful person in the room. And the man who destroyed her, he is about to discover that the woman he threw away now holds his entire life in her hands. Stay until the end, because the twist at the gala, you will never see it coming. This is the story of how nothing became everything. Value statement and lesson. What this story will teach you. This is more than entertainment. Hidden inside this drama are real strategies for protecting yourself, rebuilding from rock bottom, and turning your darkest chapter into your greatest comeback. You will learn why documenting everything matters, why skills are the one thing no one can take from you, and why the person who underestimates you has already lost. The meaning of this story is simple. Your worst day is not your final chapter. It is just the fire that forges you into something stronger. The people who break you do not get to decide who you become. You do. They say revenge is a dish best served cold. But in Austin, Texas, revenge is served with champagne, 1,000 witnesses, and a smile that could cut glass. Caroline Mitchell stood backstage at the summit, the most exclusive charity gala in the state. Her hands trembled slightly as she smoothed the fabric of her elegant black gown. Through a gap in the velvet curtains, she could see them. Her ex-husband, Derek, looking as arrogant as ever in his designer tuxedo, and clinging to his arm like a designer accessory, Vanessa Cole, the woman who had destroyed her marriage, the woman who is now wearing the engagement ring that should have been a family heirloom. 5 years. It had taken 5 years of planning, sacrifice, and silent rebuilding to reach this moment. 5 years since Derek had left her pregnant and homeless. 5 years since he had told her she was nothing. Caroline took a deep breath and whispered to herself, "Tonight, he is going to find out exactly what nothing can build." But to understand the woman standing in the shadows, you need to understand the girl she used to be. The girl who believed in love. The girl who trusted too easily. The girl who had to be completely destroyed before she could rise. This is that story. 5 years earlier, Caroline Mitchell was decorating a nursery in a 12,000 square foot mansion in the hills of Austin. She was 7 months pregnant, glowing with that particular kind of happiness that comes from believing your life is exactly where it should be. The nursery was painted a soft sage green. She had chosen every detail herself. The white wooden crib with its hand-stitched blankets. The rocking chair by the window, where she imagined nursing her baby while watching the sunset over the Texas hills. The bookshelf, already filled with children's classics, she could not wait to read aloud. Caroline hummed softly as she arranged stuffed animals on a shelf. At 34 years old, she had everything she had ever dreamed of. A beautiful home, a successful husband, a baby on the way. She had come so far from the tiny apartment in rural Oklahoma, where she had grown up, counting pennies and dreaming of something more. Her phone buzzed. She smiled when she saw her best friend Elena's name on the screen. "Girl," Elena said without preamble, "I need your advice. Ricardo wants to add a third location for the restaurant, but the loan terms are crazy. What do you think?" Caroline laughed. Elena Rodriguez had been her closest friend since they met at a community college business class 15 years ago. While Caroline had become a high school math teacher, Elena had built a small empire of Tex-Mex restaurants through sheer determination and the best enchiladas in Austin. "Send me the numbers," Caroline said. "I will look them over tonight. You are too good to me, mija." "How is my godchild cooking in there?" Caroline rubbed her belly. "Active. I think we have a soccer player." Elena paused. "Hey, I know this is random, but my mama always told me something. Always keep a bank account in your own name. Your husband does not need to know about your just-in-case money." Caroline laughed. "Derek and I share everything. We do not have secrets." "Honey," Elena replied with a snort, "my husband of 20 years still does not know I hate his mother's enchiladas. Everyone has secrets." They chatted for a few more minutes before Caroline hung up. She looked around the nursery, feeling a wave of contentment wash over her. Tomorrow was her 10th wedding anniversary. She had planned a surprise dinner at Derek's office. She would bring the picnic basket they had used on their first date, back when he was a broke engineering student, and she was working double shifts at a diner to pay for college. Those early years had been hard but beautiful. They had built Mitchell Technologies together, literally. Derek had written code in their garage, while Caroline graded papers at the kitchen table, her teaching salary paying the bills until the company took off. She had believed in him when no one else did, and now look at them. The company was worth $200 million. They had more money than Caroline had ever imagined possible. But she still clipped coupons sometimes, a habit from her childhood that she could not quite shake. Derek teased her about it. He said it was cute, the way she still thought like a small-town teacher. Caroline did not know it yet, but those words, small-town teacher, would haunt her. She did not know that her husband had been saying far worse things about her behind closed doors. She did not know that while she decorated their baby's nursery, Derek was planning to destroy her life. She did not know that in less than 24 hours, everything would change. That night, Caroline could not sleep. The baby was kicking up a storm, and she had that restless energy that sometimes came in the third trimester. She wandered down to the home office, thinking she might do some reading. On a whim, she opened her laptop and continued working on the coding project she had started 6 months ago. It was silly, really. A math teacher learning to code at 34. But she had always been good with numbers and logic, and she found programming oddly soothing. She was building a simple app, a financial literacy tool for women, something that could help people like her younger self. People who had never been taught how to manage money. Derek knew about her little project. He thought it was cute that she was keeping herself busy. He had patted her on the head like she was a child playing with blocks. "Focus on the baby, sweetheart," he had said. "Leave the tech stuff to me." Caroline had smiled and nodded. But late at night, when Derek was asleep, she kept coding. She kept learning. She kept building. She did not know yet that this silly hobby would one day save her life. The next morning dawned bright and clear. Caroline spent hours preparing for the anniversary surprise. She packed the wicker picnic basket with all of Derek's favorites. Brisket sandwiches from the place they used to go when they were dating, homemade pecan pie, a bottle of the cheap wine they had toasted with on their wedding night before they could afford the fancy stuff. She even put on the yellow sundress she had worn on their first date. It barely fit over her pregnant belly, but she made it work. She wanted Derek to remember. She wanted him to see the girl he had fallen in love with. At 3 in the afternoon, Caroline drove to the Mitchell Technologies headquarters downtown. The security guard smiled and waved her through. Everyone knew the boss's wife. She took the elevator to the executive floor, basket in hand, heart full of love and anticipation. She imagined Derek's face when he saw her. He had been working late so often recently, stressed about the new product launch. This would remind him what really mattered. The executive floor was quiet. Most of the staff had gone home early for the weekend. Caroline walked down the hallway toward Derek's corner office, her heels clicking softly on the marble floor. She heard sounds before she reached the door. Strange sounds, rhythmic sounds. Her steps slowed. Her heart began to pound. The door to Derek's office was slightly ajar. Through the gap, Caroline could see his massive mahogany desk. The desk where they had signed their first $1 million contract together. The desk where Derek kept a framed photo of their wedding day. She pushed the door open. The picnic basket fell from her hands. The wine bottle shattered. The cheap red liquid spread across the white marble like blood. Derek was there, and so was Vanessa Cole, the company's vice president of marketing. They were tangled together on the desk, next to the wedding photo, and they did not even stop when the glass broke. For a moment, Caroline could not breathe, could not think, could not process what her eyes were seeing. This was not real. This was a nightmare. She would wake up any second. But she did not wake up. Derek finally looked up. His expression cycled through surprise, annoyance, and then something cold, something calculating. "Carrie," he said, his voice irritated rather than ashamed. "What are you doing here? You are supposed to be at your doctor's appointment." That was what he said. Not, "I am sorry." Not, "This is not what it looks like." Just annoyance that she had caught him. Just irritation that she had interrupted. Vanessa smirked from behind him, not even bothering to cover herself. She looked at Caroline's pregnant belly, at the yellow sundress stretched tight, at the picnic basket and the spreading wine, and she smiled like a cat who had caught a very fat mouse. Caroline backed away. She could not speak, could not scream, could not do anything but retreat, her hands shaking, her vision blurring with tears. She drove home in a daze. She did not remember the route. She did not remember parking the car. She only remembered collapsing on the nursery floor, surrounded by stuffed animals and picture books, sobbing until she could not breathe. And then the pain started. Sharp, sudden, wrong. Caroline looked down and saw blood. The ambulance arrived. In 8 minutes, the paramedics were kind and professional. They kept telling her to breathe, to stay calm, that everything would be okay. But nothing was okay. Nothing would ever be okay again. At the hospital, Caroline was rushed into emergency care. The doctor spoke in urgent, clipped tones. Placental abruption. Stress-induced. The baby was in distress. For 6 hours, Caroline fought for her child's life. Baloney. She called Derek 17 times. He did not answer. Finally, mercifully, the crisis passed. The baby stabilized. Caroline would need to stay on bed rest for the remainder of her pregnancy, but her son would survive. She was lying in the hospital bed, exhausted and hollow, when Derek finally walked through the door. He was wearing a fresh suit. His hair was perfectly styled. He did not look like a man who had spent 6 hours worried about his wife and child. He looked like a man who had come from a business dinner, and he was carrying a manila envelope. "Carrie," Derek said, sitting down in the chair beside her bed. His voice was calm. "Rehearsed. We need to talk. Caroline stared at him. Where were you? I almost lost the baby. I called you 17 times. Derek waved his hand dismissively. I was in meetings. You know how it is, he paused. But that is actually what I wanted to discuss. He placed the manila envelope on her lap. Divorce papers. Caroline's world stopped spinning. I have been thinking about this for months, Derek continued, as if he were discussing a quarterly report. You are not the same girl I married. You have gotten comfortable. Vanessa understands my world. You never did. You are still that small-town teacher who clips coupons. I need a partner, not a dependent. Caroline could not speak. She was still hooked up to monitors, still bleeding, still fighting for the life of her unborn child. Derek, she whispered, I am having your baby. Right now. I almost died. Derek checked his watch. An actual watch check, like she was boring him. The lawyers will be in touch, he said, standing up. I will let you keep the nursery furniture. And then he walked out. He left her there, in a hospital bed, alone, holding divorce papers, and fighting to keep their child alive. Caroline did not cry. She was beyond tears. She just stared at the ceiling, at the flickering fluorescent lights, and felt something inside her die. Not the baby. The baby would survive, but the Caroline who believed in love, who trusted her husband, who thought the world was fair, that Caroline died in that hospital room, and something else began to grow in her place. The next 3 weeks were a masterclass in cruelty. Derek's lawyers were sharks. They came from the most expensive firm in Texas, the kind of lawyers who had never lost a case because they did not fight fair. They descended on Caroline's life like locusts, stripping away everything she had ever known. First came the financial freeze. Caroline discovered it at a pharmacy, trying to fill a prescription for prenatal vitamins. Her credit card was declined, then her debit card, then the backup card she kept for emergencies. I am sorry, the pharmacist said, looking embarrassed. All your accounts show frozen. Caroline called the bank. The accounts, all of them, had been locked by court order pending the divorce proceedings. Derek's lawyers had convinced a judge that Caroline was a flight risk, that she might take money and run. She had $47 in her wallet. That was all. She drove home in a daze, already strategizing. She would call Elena. She would figure something out. She always figured something out. But when she pulled up to the mansion, the gates were locked. A security guard she did not recognize stood at the entrance. Behind him, she could see workers changing the locks on the front door. I am sorry, Mrs. Mitchell, the guard said, not meeting her eyes. Mr. Mitchell says you do not live here anymore. What are you talking about? This is my home. I decorated every room in that house. I am just following orders, ma'am. Caroline got out of her car and walked toward the mansion. 2 more security guards appeared, blocking her path. On the front lawn, she could see trash bags, dozens of them, stuffed with fabric and hangers. Her clothes, her jewelry, her books, her grandmother's quilt. All of it thrown into trash bags like garbage. A neighbor across the street was watching. Caroline saw the woman raise her phone, recording. Please, Caroline said, her voice breaking. I am 7 months pregnant. I have nowhere to go. At least let me get my things properly. Let me get the baby's things. Mr. Mitchell's orders, the guard repeated. You need to leave the property, ma'am, or we will call the police. Caroline stood there, surrounded by trash bags full of her life, while strangers filmed her humiliation. She was wearing the same clothes she had put on that morning. She had no money, no home, no husband. She was 7 months pregnant with nowhere to go. Elena arrived within the hour. She loaded the trash bags into her truck and drove Caroline to her small apartment above the restaurant. She did not ask questions. She just held her friend and let her cry. The video went viral within 24 hours. Tech CEO's pregnant wife thrown out like trash. That was the headline. Carolyn watched it spread across social media, watched strangers dissect her appearance, her outfit, her pregnant belly. And then Derek's PR team struck back. Unstable wife's mental health crisis. The new headline read, Derek Mitchell bravely protects unborn child from dangerous situation. Suddenly, the narrative shifted. Carolyn was not the victim. She was the villain. Derek had been forced to remove her for her own safety. She was having a breakdown. She was unstable. She was dangerous. The comments were brutal. She probably cheated, one said. She looks crazy, said another. Gold digger got what she deserved. Caroline read every comment. She could not stop herself. She watched the world turn against her in real time. Watched strangers who had never met her decide she was worthless. Watched her husband rewrite their entire history with lies. She stopped eating. She barely slept. The only thing keeping her going was the baby kicking inside her, reminding her that someone still needed her to survive. Elena tried everything. She brought food, she played music, she told jokes, but Caroline was disappearing into herself, sinking into a darkness that felt bottomless. Mija, Elena said one night, sitting on the edge of the air mattress where Caroline lay staring at the ceiling. You cannot give up. You have to fight. Fight with what? Caroline whispered. He has all the money, all the lawyers. The whole world believes him. I have nothing. Elena grabbed her hand, squeezing hard. When they take everything, they cannot take what you know. Skills do not divorce you. You are the smartest woman I know. You taught high school math. You balanced my restaurant's books for free for 10 years. You learned to code in your spare time. That brain of yours is worth more than all of Derek's money. Caroline closed her eyes. It did not feel that way. It felt like she was drowning, and no amount of intelligence could save her from the weight of her own despair. But Elena's words planted a seed, a tiny seed buried deep in the darkness. It would take time to grow. It would take pain, but it was there. The custody hearing came 6 weeks after Caroline's son was born. She named him Tommy. Thomas Marcus Mitchell, after her grandfather and her brother. He was small but healthy, with his mother's dark hair and his father's stubborn chin. Caroline loved him with a ferocity that terrified her. She would do anything for this child. Anything. But in the courtroom, love was not enough. Derek's lawyers painted a devastating picture. They showed the viral video and called it evidence of instability. They brought in a psychologist who had never met Caroline, but was willing to testify that her behavior suggested mental illness. They pointed to her living situation, a tiny apartment above a restaurant, as proof she could not provide a stable home. And they brought up her coding. The wife was spending nights obsessively working on computer programs, the lawyer said, his voice dripping with false concern. Neglecting her marriage, neglecting her responsibilities. This obsessive behavior is consistent with someone experiencing a psychological break. Caroline wanted to scream. She wanted to stand up and tell the truth. She wanted to explain that she had learned to code because she wanted to help other women, that she had worked on her project at night because Derek was never home anyway, that she had been a devoted wife for 10 years while he built his empire on her sacrifices. But her public defender, an overworked man with a stained tie, who clearly wished he was anywhere else, told her to stay calm, to not make a scene, to trust the process. She trusted the process. The process destroyed her. Derek took the stand with tears in his eyes. Fake tears, Caroline knew, but the judge did not. I just want what is best for our child, Derek said, his voice breaking. Carrie needs help. I am willing to pay for a facility. I love her. I always will. but she is not well, and I cannot let her hurt our son." Caroline's lawyer barely cross-examined him. The case was over before it began. The judge's ruling was swift and brutal. Derek received the mansion, the cars, and 90% of the marital assets. He also received primary custody of Tommy. Caroline was granted supervised visitation twice a month. She was ordered to undergo a mental health evaluation before any custody modification could be considered. "Your Honor," Caroline said, her voice shaking, "you are giving my baby to the man who left me in a hospital, the man who threw me out of my home. I am his mother. I love him. I would never hurt him." The judge looked at her with cold eyes. "The court sees a stable home and an unstable mother," she said. "That is the reality, Mrs. Mitchell." Next case. Carolyn watched as a social worker took Tommy from her arms. He was 3 months old. He did not understand why his mother was crying. He did not understand why she was not coming with him. "Mama loves you," Carolyn whispered, kissing his forehead. "Mama will always love you. I will find a way back to you. I promise." She watched them carry her baby out of the courtroom, and something inside her shifted. The sadness was still there, the grief, the despair, but beneath it all, something harder was forming, something sharp and cold and patient. Derek had taken everything from her, her marriage, her money, her home, her child. He thought she was broken. He thought she was finished. He had no idea what he had created. 6 months later, Caroline sat in a conference room in downtown Austin across from 3 venture capitalists in expensive suits. Her heart was pounding, but her hands were steady. She had practiced this pitch 500 times. "Phoenix Financial," she said, clicking to the first slide of her presentation, "a mobile platform that helps women protect themselves financially during divorce. It provides document storage, expense tracking, legal resources, and a secure communication system that cannot be accessed by an abusive spouse." The VCs leaned forward. They were interested. The app was her baby now. Not the hobby Derek had mocked, but a fully developed product that had taken 6 months of sleepless nights to complete. She had coded it herself, every line. She had tested it with women at domestic violence shelters. She had refined it based on their feedback. And it worked. It worked beautifully. "The market is vast," Caroline continued. 50% of marriages end in divorce. In 80% of those cases, one spouse has significantly more financial power than the other. These women need tools to protect themselves. Phoenix gives them those tools. The lead VC, a silver-haired man named Richard, nodded slowly. "The numbers are impressive," he said. "The concept is solid. But I need to ask about your background. You were a teacher, correct? No tech experience?" Caroline smiled. "That was true," she said, "until I built this app myself over the past 2 years. I taught myself to code because I needed to solve a problem. That is what teachers do. We learn, we adapt, and we never give up on our students, or in this case, on the women who need this product." Richard exchanged glances with his partners. They whispered among themselves. "We would like to offer you seed funding," Richard said finally. $2 million for a 15% stake. "Congratulations, Mrs. Mitchell. You have a deal." Caroline wanted to cry. She wanted to scream with joy. She wanted to call Elena and dance around the tiny apartment they still shared. Instead, she shook hands professionally, thanked them for their time, and walked out of the building with her head held high. She made it all the way to her car before she broke down, sobbing. It was happening. She was climbing out of the pit Derek had thrown her into. She would get Tommy back. She would rebuild her life. She would prove everyone wrong. But revenge was not part of the plan. Not yet. Right now, all Caroline wanted was her son. She scheduled a meeting with her lawyer the next day. With funding secured, She could afford better representation. She could petition to reopen the custody case. She could show the court that she was stable, successful, and ready to be a mother. Everything was falling into place. Until it wasn't. The meeting was supposed to be at a downtown law firm, but when Caroline arrived, the receptionist looked confused. "I am sorry," the woman said. "There must be some mistake. This meeting was canceled yesterday." Canceled? By whom? Before the receptionist could answer, a familiar voice came from behind her. "By me." Caroline turned. Derek stood in the doorway of the conference room, flanked by two lawyers. He was smiling, but his eyes were cold. "Carrie," he said, stepping toward her, "I heard about your little app. Congratulations. I always knew you were clever." Caroline's blood ran cold. "How did you know about the funding?" "Because I arranged it," Derek said casually, adjusting his cufflinks. "Richard Chin is an old friend. He owed me a favor. I wanted to see what you were building, and I have to admit, I am impressed." He pulled a document from his jacket pocket. "Unfortunately, you made a mistake. When we were married, you signed a post-nuptial agreement. Anything created during the marriage or within 2 years of separation is community property. That means your app belongs to me." Caroline felt the floor drop out from under her. "No," she whispered. "That is not possible. We have been divorced for over a year." "Separated, not divorced," Derek corrected. "The divorce was not finalized until 8 months ago. And you started coding this app, what, 18 months ago? Plenty of time before the cutoff." He smiled, and it was the cruelest expression she had ever seen on a human face. "Thank you for doing all the hard work, Carrie. Mitchell Technologies will take it from here." He walked past her, leaving the document on the reception desk. His lawyers followed, not even glancing in her direction. Caroline stood frozen. She could not breathe, could not think. He had orchestrated everything, the funding, the meeting, all of it. He had let her believe she was winning, let her hope, let her dream. And then he had snatched it all away. She picked up the document with trembling hands. It was a cease and desist order demanding she hand over all source code, designs, and documentation related to Phoenix Financial. He was stealing her work. Again. 3 months later, Mitchell Technologies announced the launch of a new product. They called it MoneySmart, a financial literacy app for women. It was Caroline's code, her design, her vision. Derek did not even bother to change the interface. It made $40 million in the first year. Caroline watched the launch party on television, saw Derek accepting awards for innovation, heard him speak about his passion for empowering women. She watched Vanessa Cole, now his official fiancée, clinging to his arm and smiling for the cameras, and she felt something inside her snap. Not break, snap. Like a bone that heals stronger after fracturing. This was not about custody anymore. This was not about money. This was war. But Caroline was smart enough to know she could not win a fair fight. Derek had too much power, too many resources, too many connections. If she confronted him directly, he would crush her. She needed to be invisible. She needed to disappear and rebuild somewhere he could not find her. She needed time. Most importantly, she needed her brother. Marcus Webb had served 2 tours in Afghanistan before becoming a private investigator in Houston. He was quiet, methodical, and absolutely loyal to his sister. When Caroline called him at 3 in the morning, explaining everything through tears, he did not hesitate. "Pack your bags," he said. "You are coming to stay with me, and we are going to take that bastard down. Legally, carefully, and completely." But Marcus, the custody case. "If I leave Austin, I lose my visitation rights. Carrie," Marcus said gently, "you see Tommy twice a month, supervised, for 2 hours. They are already poisoning him against you. You need to play the long game. Let Derek think he won. Let him get comfortable. And in 5 years, when you come back with an army. 5 years? Caroline whispered. Tommy will be 6 years old. He will not remember me. He will remember that his mother fought for him, Marcus said. Trust me, I have seen what men like Derek do when they think they have won. They get sloppy, they make mistakes, and when they do, we will be there. Caroline looked around the tiny apartment, at the air mattress where she slept, at the boxes of baby clothes she had bought for a nursery she would never finish, at the framed photo of Tommy that Elena had managed to sneak from a supervised visit. She picked up the photo and held it to her chest. 5 years, she said, and then I am taking everything back. California was a different world. Caroline moved to San Francisco under a new name, Caroline Abbott, a common enough surname that it would never raise suspicion. She rented a small apartment in the Mission District, found a job at a startup as a junior developer, and began the slow, methodical process of rebuilding. The work was grueling. At 35, Caroline was older than most of her coworkers by a decade. She worked twice as hard to prove herself, staying late every night, learning every new framework and language she could get her hands on. Her managers noticed. Within a year, she was promoted to senior developer. Within 2 years, she was leading her own team. But her real work happened after hours. Every night, after her official job was done, Caroline returned home and continued building. Not Phoenix Financial. Derek had stolen that code, but the knowledge was still in her head. She created something new, something bigger, something better. She called it Artemis. Where Phoenix had been a simple financial protection tool, Artemis was an ecosystem. It used artificial intelligence to analyze financial abuse patterns. It connected users with legal resources, shelters, and support groups. It provided secure document storage that was encrypted so thoroughly that even a court order could not access it without the user's permission. And it was free. Caroline had no intention of profiting from other women's pain. She would fund Artemis through corporate partnerships, through grants, through her own growing savings. But the core product would always be free for the women who needed it most. Marcus helped from Houston. He spent his free time digging into Mitchell Technologies, building a dossier on Derek's business practices. And there was plenty to find. The offshore accounts were just the beginning. Derek had been playing fast and loose with investor money for years. He had falsified earnings reports, manipulated stock prices, and engaged in insider trading. He had built his empire on fraud. And then there was Vanessa. She is bad news, Marcus reported during one of their weekly phone calls. I have been tracking her finances. She is siphoning money from Mitchell Tech into personal accounts. Small amounts, but they are adding up. My guess? She is planning an exit strategy. So she is not loyal to him, Caroline mused. She is loyal to herself, Marcus said. She was using Derek from the beginning. The question is, what she is planning. Caroline filed that information away. Vanessa Cole was not her friend, but enemies of enemies had their uses. 3 years into her California exile, Caroline's startup was acquired by a tech giant. Her stock options were worth $12 million. It was more money than she had ever dreamed of. She quit the next day. For the next 2 years, Caroline devoted herself entirely to Artemis. She hired a small team of developers, all women, many of whom had experienced financial abuse themselves. She worked 18-hour days, refining the product, testing it, preparing for launch, and she started buying. Through a shell company Marcus had helped her create, Caroline began acquiring stock in Mitchell Technologies. Small purchases at first, nothing that would raise red flags. But over time, the holdings grew 5%, 10%, 15%. Derek had no idea. He was too busy attending galas with Vanessa too busy being celebrated by the tech community, too busy believing he was invincible. Meanwhile, Caroline was becoming a ghost. She avoided photographs, she declined interviews. When Artemis launched and became an immediate success, she let her COO handle the publicity. Caroline Abbott was a name on incorporation documents, nothing more. The tech press was fascinated by the mystery. Who was the anonymous billionaire behind Artemis? Who was funding this revolutionary platform? Speculation ran wild, but no one connected the dots. No one looked at the quiet, mousy ex-wife of Derek Mitchell and saw a threat. That was exactly how Caroline wanted it. On Tommy's 5th birthday, Caroline sat alone in her San Francisco apartment looking at a photograph. It was the only picture she had of her son after infancy, taken by Marcus during a surveillance operation outside Tommy's school. The boy in the photo looked sad. He was standing apart from other children, clutching a backpack that looked too expensive for a kindergartner. A nanny stood nearby, scrolling on her phone, not paying attention. Derek had not even shown up for his own son's birthday party the year before, Marcus had told her. Vanessa had hired an event planner and then spent the whole party on her phone. Tommy had cried when he blew out the candles. "One more year," Caroline whispered to the photograph. "One more year, and I am coming for you." She had everything in place now. The money, the leverage, the evidence. All she needed was the right moment. That moment arrived 6 months later, in the form of a heavy cream envelope sealed with black wax, an invitation to the summit, Austin's most exclusive charity gala. But Caroline was not receiving the invitation. She was sending it, because Caroline Abbott did not just own Artemis. She owned the building where the summit was held. She owned the catering company. She owned the security firm. And as of that morning, she owned 51% of Mitchell Technologies' debt. She picked up the phone and dialed Marcus. "Send the guest list," she said. "Make sure Derek Mitchell gets an invitation. And make sure he brings Vanessa." "Are you ready?" Marcus asked. Caroline looked at the photograph of her son one more time. Then she looked at the red gown hanging in her closet. The gown she had bought specifically for this night. "I have been ready for 5 years," she said. "It is time to go home." Austin in October was beautiful. The brutal summer heat had finally broken, leaving behind warm days and cool nights, perfect for outdoor events. The trees along the Colorado River were just starting to turn, hints of gold and red appearing among the green. Caroline stood at the window of her hotel suite, looking out at the city skyline. Somewhere out there, her son was waking up for school. Somewhere out there, Derek was probably getting ready for another day of pretending to be a visionary leader. Neither of them knew she was here. Neither of them knew what was coming. Her phone buzzed. A text from Elena. "I still cannot believe you kept this secret for 5 years. I thought you moved to California to find yourself, or whatever. Not to become a billionaire supervillain." Caroline smiled. Elena had been the first person she told, 2 weeks ago. The screaming, crying, and cursing in Spanish had lasted approximately 45 minutes, followed by fierce hugs and promises of loyalty. "I am not a supervillain," Caroline typed back. "I am just a woman who learned to code. Mia, you own his company. You are about to destroy him at a party you are throwing. That is supervillain energy, and I am here for it." Caroline laughed for the first time in weeks. She needed Elena's humor right now. The nerves were building, threatening to overwhelm her. She had been planning this moment for half a decade, but now that it was here, doubt crept in. What if something went wrong? What if Derek had some trick up his sleeve? What if she failed in front of everyone? A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. It was Marcus, carrying a tablet and a thick folder. "Final briefing," he said. "All business. The gala starts in 8 hours. Security is in place. The audio-visual team has tested the presentation 3 times. The FBI contact is confirmed. FBI? Caroline asked, raising an eyebrow. I told you Derek was sloppy, Marcus said with a grim smile. The evidence we gathered on his securities fraud was enough to get their attention. They have been building a case for months. Tonight, they make their move. He paused. Vanessa, too. The embezzlement charges are solid. Caroline nodded slowly. This was bigger than personal revenge now. This was justice. What about the custody angle? She asked. Marcus opened the folder. I reached out to Judge Patricia Hartwell, the same judge from your original case. Caroline's stomach dropped. The woman who took my son from me? The same. But here's the thing. Marcus slid a document across the table. 6 months after your case, her own daughter went through a brutal divorce. Similar situation? Rich husband? Expensive lawyers? Custody stolen. It destroyed her. Carolyn stared at the document. It was a private letter, written by Judge Hartwell to her daughter. The words were raw with regret. She has been following your case for years, Marcus continued. She knows she made a mistake. When I reached out, explained who you really are, what you have built. She wanted to help. She will be at the gala tonight, unofficially. Caroline felt tears prick her eyes. All those years ago, she had seen Judge Hartwell as a monster. Cold, heartless, just another person in the system that had failed her, but she was also a mother. A mother who had learned, too late, what it felt like to be powerless. There is one more thing, Marcus said. He pulled out his phone and showed her a video. It was Tommy. A recent video, taken outside his school. He was walking alone, head down, while other children ran and played around him. A teacher approached him, clearly concerned. Tommy shook his head and kept walking. He is not happy, Marcus said quietly. The nanny told my contact that he asks about you. His mama, Derek Bois, tells him you are sick, that you are in a hospital somewhere, that you did not want him. Caroline's hands curled into fists. He is lying to my son, she whispered. He is making Tommy think I abandoned him. That is why we are doing this, Marcus said. Not for revenge, for that little boy who needs his mother, Caroline nodded, steel returning to her spine. She had wavered for a moment, but no longer. This was not about making Derek suffer, though that would be satisfying. This was about Tommy. This was about every woman Derek had used and discarded. This was about showing the world that small-town teachers from Oklahoma do not stay down when they are knocked down. They get up, they learn, they build, and they win. 8 hours later, Caroline stood backstage at the summit, watching through a gap in the curtain as Austin's elite arrived. The venue was stunning. She had chosen the historic Driskill Hotel ballroom, with its soaring ceilings and crystal chandeliers. The theme was Phoenix Rising, though only she understood the true meaning. Everywhere you looked, there were subtle hints of fire and rebirth. Red flowers, gold accents, candles flickering like flames. Elena appeared beside her, stunning in a purple gown that Caroline had bought for her as a thank you for years of friendship. Mija, Elena whispered, squeezing her hand. He just walked in. Caroline looked through the curtain. There he was. Derek Mitchell, looking as arrogant as ever in his designer tuxedo. And on his arm, Vanessa Cole, dripping in diamonds and wearing a smile as fake as her relationship. They were laughing, working the room, shaking hands with senators and tech executives. Derek was in his element, the king of his domain, completely unaware that the ground beneath him was about to open up. Caroline watched as he spotted the massive screen at the front of the ballroom. Her presentation was queued up, ready to go. A single image displayed. The Phoenix Rising logo. Nice branding, she heard Derek say to Vanessa. Very dramatic. though I have no idea who this Abbott woman is. Probably some trust fund baby playing philanthropist. Vanessa laughed. Who cares? Free champagne and networking. Just smile and let them adore you. Carolyn felt a cold smile cross her face. Adore him? Not for much longer. She turned to Elena. It is time? Elena nodded, hugging her fiercely. Go get your son back. Carolyn straightened her shoulders. She took one last breath, and she stepped out from behind the curtain. The ballroom fell silent as Caroline emerged onto the raised stage. She looked different now. 5 years had transformed her from a mousy teacher into something sharper, more refined. Her dark hair was swept up elegantly. Her simple black gown was understated, but clearly expensive, quality recognizing quality. She wore no jewelry except for a small silver locket at her throat, the locket that Derek had forced her to pawn, the locket she had bought back the day her first paycheck cleared in California. She stepped up to the microphone, and her voice rang out clear and strong. Good evening, Austin. Thank you for joining me tonight at the summit. The applause was polite, curious. People were still trying to figure out who she was. She could see them whispering, checking phones, trying to place her face. In the crowd, Derek's smile was fading. He was staring at the stage with narrowed eyes, something tugging at his memory. My name is Caroline Abbott, she continued. Some of you may know me as the founder of Artemis, the financial protection platform that has helped over 2 million women escape abusive situations. Impressed murmurs rippled through the crowd. Several women nodded appreciatively. But you may know me better by my previous name, she paused, letting the silence build. Caroline Mitchell, Derek's ex-wife. The gasp was audible. Head swiveled toward Derek, whose face had gone pale. Vanessa's champagne glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the marble floor. For a moment, no one moved. Then the whispers exploded. That is his ex-wife? She founded Artemis? She's the anonymous billionaire? Caroline let them process. She watched Derek's face cycle through shock, confusion, and the first hints of fear. 5 years ago, she said, her voice steady, I was 7 months pregnant when I discovered my husband was having an affair. He served me with divorce papers while I was in the hospital, fighting for my baby's life. He threw me out of our home. He froze my accounts. He took custody of my son, and he stole my work, rebranding it as his own product. The crowd had gone completely silent now. Every eye was on Derek, who looked like a man watching his own funeral. I could have given up, Caroline continued. I had every reason to, but I had a son who needed me, and I had something Derek never understood. She leaned into the microphone. I had skills, I had determination, and I had time. The screen behind her lit up with documents, bank statements, wire transfers, stock certificates. Over the past 5 years, I have quietly acquired controlling interest in Mitchell Technologies' debt. As of this morning, I own 51%, which means technically I own the company. Derek's face went from pale to gray. But it gets worse, Caroline continued. For him anyway. New documents appeared, financial records, falsified earnings reports, evidence of securities fraud that would be clear to anyone with basic accounting knowledge. These are internal documents from Mitchell Technologies, showing a pattern of fraud dating back 7 years, falsified earnings, manipulated stock prices, embezzlement. She let that word hang in the air. And speaking of embezzlement, the screen changed to show bank transfers, Vanessa's bank transfers. Someone in this room has been quietly siphoning $3.2 million from Mitchell Technologies into personal accounts. Would you like to tell them, Vanessa? Or should I? All eyes turned to Vanessa Cole. She was backing toward the exit, her face twisted with panic. I don't know what you're talking about, Vanessa stammered. This is insane. Derek, tell them she's crazy. But Derek was not looking at her. He was looking at the evidence on the screen, his empire crumbling in real time. The doors at the back of the ballroom opened. Two men in dark suits walked in, followed by four more. They moved with the quiet efficiency of federal agents who knew exactly where they were going. Derek Mitchell, one of them said. Vanessa Cole, you are both under arrest for securities fraud, embezzlement, and tax evasion. You have the right to remain silent. The room erupted. Cameras flashed. People were shouting, jostling for position. The agents moved through to the crowd, handcuffing both Derek and Vanessa, while the assembled elite of Austin watched in shock. Derek struggled against the cuffs, his face contorted with rage. "You can't do this," he shouted at Caroline. "I made you. You were nothing before me." Caroline stepped down from the stage and walked toward him. The crowd parted for her like the Red Sea. She stopped just inches from Derek's face, close enough to see the veins throbbing in his temple. "I was never nothing," she said quietly. "I was your wife. I was the mother of your child. I was the woman who believed in you when no one else did. But you could not see my value because you were too busy looking in the mirror." She stepped back. "Enjoy prison, Derek. I hear the food is terrible." The agents led him away. Vanessa was already gone, sobbing as she was escorted to a separate vehicle. Caroline stood in the center of the ballroom, surrounded by 500 of the most powerful people in Texas. For a moment, she did not know what to do. The revenge she had planned for 5 years was complete. Derek was destroyed. Vanessa was exposed. Justice was served, but she did not feel triumphant. She felt empty. And then she saw him, a small figure standing near the back of the room, holding the hand of a confused-looking nanny. He was wearing a tiny tuxedo that was too big for him. His dark hair was messy. His eyes were wide and scared. Tommy, her son, the baby she had held in that hospital room 5 years ago, the child she had kissed goodbye in a courthouse, the little boy she had dreamed about every single night. He was here. Caroline's legs moved before her brain caught up. She was pushing through that crowd, not caring about dignity or composure, not caring about anything except the small boy at the back of the room. The nanny saw her coming and stepped protectively in front of Tommy. "Ma'am, I'm not sure who you are, but—" "I am his mother," Caroline said, and her voice broke on the word. The nanny's eyes widened. She looked at Caroline, really looked at her, and recognition dawned. "Oh," she whispered. "Oh my God, I thought you were sick? In a hospital?" Caroline's voice was bitter. "That is what Derek told him, isn't it?" The nanny nodded, looking guilty. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I just took the job 6 months ago." Mr. Mitchell said, he said a lot of things. Caroline knelt down so she was at Tommy's eye level. The boy was staring at her with a mixture of fear and fascination. "Hi, sweetheart," she said softly. "Do you know who I am?" Tommy shook his head slowly, but then he paused. "You look like the lady in the picture," he said. "The one Daddy told me not to look at." Caroline's heart shattered and rebuilt itself in the span of a single breath. "What picture, baby?" "In the attic," Tommy said. "There is a box. Daddy said it was garbage. But I looked inside. There was a lady who looked like you. She was holding a baby." Tears streamed down Caroline's face. "That was me," she said. "And the baby was you. I am your mother, Tommy. I have been looking for you for a very long time." Tommy's lower lip trembled. "Daddy said you didn't want me," he whispered. "He said you were sick in your brain and you forgot about me." Caroline reached out slowly, giving him time to pull away. But he didn't. She cupped his small face in her hands. "I never forgot you," she said fiercely. "Not for one single day. I thought about you every morning and every night. I have a picture of you next to my bed." I have loved you every moment since you were born, and I will love you for the rest of my life." Tommy's eyes filled with tears. "Then why did you leave?" "I didn't leave, baby. Your daddy took you away from me, and I have spent 5 years trying to get you back. That is why I am here tonight. That is why I did all of this. For you." For a long moment, Tommy just stared at her, 5 years old, trying to process information that would confuse an adult. Then he threw his arms around her neck. "Mama," he sobbed. "Mama, I missed you." Caroline held him tight, crying into his hair, not caring that 500 people were watching. Let them watch. Let them see what a mother's love looked like. Let them see what Derek Mitchell had tried to destroy. "I missed you too, baby," she whispered. "So much. But I am here now, and I am never leaving you again." The crowd had gone quiet. Even the journalists had stopped taking pictures, respecting the moment. Elena was crying openly. Even Marcus, standing near the door with his arms crossed, had tears in his eyes. The nanny knelt down next to them. "Mrs. Mitchell," she said quietly, "for what it is worth, Tommy is a wonderful boy. He talks about his mama sometimes. Late at night, he asks if she is looking at the same stars as him." Caroline looked up at the young woman, gratitude overwhelming her. "Thank you," she said. "Thank you for taking care of him." A hand touched her shoulder. She looked up to see an older woman in a severe black dress. It took a moment to recognize her, Judge Hartwell. The woman who had taken her son away was standing before her now, her eyes bright with tears. "Mrs. Mitchell," the judge said, her voice unsteady, "I owe you an apology, one that is 5 years overdue." Caroline slowly stood, still holding Tommy's hand. "You believed him," she said quietly. "You believed every lie he told." "I did," Judge Hartwell admitted, "and I have lived with that mistake every day since." When my own daughter went through something similar, she stopped, composing herself. "I understand now. I understand what I did to you." Caroline could have raged at her, could have screamed, cursed, demanded accountability, but she looked at the judge's face and saw genuine remorse. She saw a woman who had made a terrible mistake and knew it, and she thought about what she wanted to teach Tommy, about forgiveness, about second chances, about being the bigger person. "I accept your apology," Caroline said, "but I need you to do something for me. Anything." Caroline looked down at Tommy, then back at the judge. "I need you to fix it, officially. I need custody of my son returned to me, and I need it to happen fast, before Derek's lawyers can interfere." Judge Hartwell nodded immediately. "I will file an emergency motion first thing Monday morning," she said. "Given the circumstances, given the arrests, it should be straightforward. But Mrs. Mitchell, there is something else." She reached into her purse and pulled out a document. "I had this prepared in case tonight went as planned. It is a formal acknowledgement of judicial error in your original custody case. It will go in the public record. Everyone will know what happened to you, and everyone will know it was wrong." Carolyn took the document with trembling hands. 5 years of injustice, officially acknowledged. 5 years of pain, validated. "Thank you," she whispered. Judge Hartwell squeezed her hand. "Thank you," she said, "for showing me that it is never too late to do the right thing." As the judge walked away, Carolyn looked around the ballroom. The crowd was starting to disperse, the drama of the evening finally winding down. Servers were cleaning up broken glass. Journalists were filing their stories. The powerful elite of Austin were heading home with quite a tale to tell. But Caroline had no interest in any of them. She had what she wanted. She knelt back down to Tommy's level. "Hey, buddy," she said. "Are you hungry? My friend Elena makes the best enchiladas in all of Texas. Want to go get some?" Tommy's face lit up with the first real smile she had seen from him. "With real cheese?" "So much cheese," Caroline promised. "And ice cream after. And maybe some churros if you're really good." Tommy grabbed her hand with both of his. Let's go, Mama. Caroline stood, her son's hand clasped firmly in hers. Elena appeared beside her, mascara streaming down her face. Mija! She sobbed, pulling Caroline into a hug. You did it. You actually did it. We did it, Caroline corrected. I could not have done any of this without you. Elena looked down at Tommy and immediately dropped to her knees. And you must be my godson, she said, switching instantly to her warm abuela voice. I have been waiting 5 years to meet you, mijo. Your mama talks about you all the time. Tommy looked up at Caroline. Who is she? That is your tia Elena, Caroline said. She is my best friend, and she is going to spoil you absolutely rotten. I heard something about enchiladas? Tommy asked hopefully. Elena laughed. This kid, she said to Caroline. He is definitely yours. Come on, mijos. Let's get out of here. I have a restaurant to open.